So I'm looking forward to our panel discussion today on healing. I think there's been a real revitalization of on-the-land healing. Um, and so this discussion is very relevant. Perhaps we'll start with some roundtable introductions. I'll start with myself. My name is Ori Washi. I'm with the Department of Health and Social Services, Aboriginal Health and Community Wellness. And I am Clinchon from Yellowknife.
My name is Bessa Blondin. I come from Great Bear Lake, Delina. I live in Yellowknife for a while. And I have an organization called Arctic Indigenous Wellness Foundation. We're just opening up a brand new organization for healing people from all over the Arctic. And I also have another organization called Northern Ice. And that organization is to get directions from the elders and to build their programs. And so I'm really happy to be here. And I want to thank all the people for traveling so many miles to be here to listen to something that's so important, that we look at building a better programs for our people to heal, and so that we can have happy little children that are not here yet. We're planning all this for them. So wansi masicho.
Okay, and I'm a very Lars can tell you about me more better than I can, because there are too many young women looking at me, and I'm very shy when that happens.
That's my uncle. My name is, my settler name is Larry Lawrence House. I have a Cree name, and I have a lot of Cree names. I'm a work in progress. I'm the most broken human being you can find doing this work, but I enjoy it. My name is Larry. I'm from Sassebe. I guess that's the introduction. Should I start? Okay. To give context to this presentation, I have to go into my life to give context to it. Both my parents went to residential school. I grew up, same story across Canada, alcoholic family, violence. I experienced all the abuses that happened in those schools. And I overcame, I'm in the progress of overcoming, getting into dealing with the feeling that it caused in my life. From an early age, I experienced violence. The age of 3, one of the most vivid memories I have is somebody running through my yard who had been stabbed. Older gentleman at 3 years old. And what that did to me, in school, I didn't quite fit in for whatever reason. But today I'm finding purpose in that. I'm finding purpose in why those things didn't work out for me. And I ended up, I was the first young offender to be taken out on the land. The director of youth protection calls me into his office. I had 300 hits of acid in my pocket. And he says, "What are you selling? Are you selling cocaine?" I said, "No." "Well, we hear you're selling something. We're going to put your family through court." I just gotten kicked out of the Shawbridge, outside of Montreal. There's a locked youth detention facility. I just gotten kicked out of there. So I went home and they said, "We're going to put you through court again." And me thinking I was going to avoid the system, I said, why don't I go in the bush? I didn't know what I was doing. I thought I was getting away from something. But when I went in the bush with this old man, he never asked me why I was there. He never asked me why I couldn't live with my parents. What he taught me was my creation stories. He told me who my heroes were. He told me who Mikujo was. He told me about Nishkino. He told me about Chkebesh. He told me about all these things. And what it did was it gave me context. It gave me an identity. My first language is English. I didn't learn Cree until I was 7. But now I'm fluent because I grew up with the culture. I lived with my grandfather. He spoke no English. I spoke no Cree. So it was interesting. So anyways, growing up, moving it on further, I got married. I said, when the priest was standing there, he said, "Well, do you?" I said, "Well, I'll try." No, I'm just kidding. No, I said I do. So we have 3 kids. I have 21 grandchildren now. And in my work, I've been blessed to become involved in certain places. Like I was on council. I worked in NADAB. I worked with young offenders. I was on the board of the health board. And this is where we started with this. And what we looked at was how do we integrate? How do we bring, some of it was discussed here, how do we bring that positive cultural identity? How do we bring that to our people? How do we restore that? Because that's what was taken away. That's what was taken away in that episode of cultural genocide. So we looked at ways to do this, and prior to 2009, I was jumping around and doing a whole bunch of different projects, proposal by proposal. And then my uncle pulled me aside and he says, "Come here," he says. "Here's what I want to do," he says. So this is what we started. And we had a small group. We, in 2009, we started getting organized. We created a committee in the community called the Mi'kmaq Committee, which is Living Life Well. And we started doing these camps. And this really made a lot of sense to me when we went down to New Zealand. One of our milestones, I guess, was being invited to this conference to present. And this doctor here was speaking, and he says, "The world over, Indigenous people are on a quest for social justice. World over. And there's a longing to go back to the original teachings." And that's hard, but it doesn't have to be separate. And he said, in between here, where they intersect, that's the creative potential. It can be whatever we want it to be. And that made a lot of sense to me. With the guidance of our elders. So, with that, we started this program. And when he told me what he wanted to do, I told my buddy, I said, go with them, go with them. Every day, write out what we do, what he does on the program. In the community, the ideal situation is having the committee as the intermediary between all the entities in our the service providing entities in our communities, and helping to integrate that worldview or that cosmology or those practices into the programs. So we have created this committee, and we started this Bush program, and it's growing. The interest within the community is growing. Right now, there's a lot of the models of governance that we've chosen are fractured and compartmentalized. And that is something we need to change in our communities. Some of the partnerships and progress that we've done over the last two to 4 years, we're in our 4th year of funding now. These are some of the work that we did. And there's still a lot of work to be done. This is going to be available here. I'm not going to read it as it's written. But it's important to know when we're doing this stuff that it's centered on the individual, the client, and that cultural safety and cultural competence is key to delivering, and who can do that the best is our own people, our elders, our grandmothers and our grandfathers. One day we had the training from Thunderbird Partnership Foundation, Cultural Safety and Cultural Competence. We asked them to come in to the community. And my uncle was gone. And we had a room full of white people. Boy, was I scared. No, I'm just kidding. All the clinicians came. All the clinicians, the doctors, the nurses that work in our community, they came. And I didn't feel comfortable trying to explain this, so all day that day, I was just thinking, I wish my uncle was here. I wish my uncle was here. 7 o'clock, as we're starting that meeting, who's standing in the doorway? He comes in, I said, good. So we started the Cultural Safety, Cultural Competence Workshop. And I said, I hope this doesn't turn into a circle. And I said, because of the amount of people. And right away, people started turning it. The power of the mind, eh? What you don't want. And it ended up being a circle, but it ended up being something really important. And all the clinicians, once they heard what we were talking about, they wrote a letter supporting our initiative. All the doctors and the nurses, they said, move on this. Because every weekend, there's something going on in the clinic. Something's happened, somebody got stabbed, somebody OD'd, there's a sexual assault, and once we moved them out of out of triage, we don't know what goes on. So they said, go for it. So with that, we kept at it. We came up with a 5-year strategic plan, and apparently there's lots of different plans. There's the strategic plan, there's the tactical plan, there's the operational plan. And I said, at some point you got to stop planning, we got to start doing things. So anyway, this is what we did. And it's all within the guidance of our elders. And we have the sciences plugging into that knowledge. When, at one point there, I got sick and I went to the hospital and they said, oh, they were going to admit me right away. And I said, wait a minute. They took my blood pressure and I just calmed myself down and I closed my eyes and I thought about being someplace with my grandfather. And they took my blood pressure again. The results were immediate. So that feeling of being out there, you can take it anywhere. It's a discipline of the mind. And not to get caught up in what happened to us as a people. But that's not saying that doesn't need a voice. We need to create those safe places for that to happen. For it to happen in a public meeting, the energy of that is tiring. But we need to create the safe places for that dialogue to take place. What happened in the schools? I sat in on one interview with one lawyer on the independent assessment claim. I sat in one, and I told my buddy, I said, when you go, take a lot of people with you. You're going to need the support, I told him. Because just that one session I had with him, I said, holy cow. So that is why we're doing this. Something happened to us as a people that took us away from our genuine selves. And that is what we're trying to get back. This term, reconciliation, we welcome people to this land. Open arms, The reconciling that needs to happen. I have struggles with that. And that's being honest. And if anything, these programs are a part of that, could be a part of that. So if you want to read any of this, it'll be up here. The intensity, this young man here in the picture, wasn't known to reach out to many people. One weekend he got left. And he started calling people, I need a ride out there. I need a ride out there. I want to go. And what it does is it connects us all back to that relationship. First with the land and our families and ourselves. So that's the team composition. There's the elders, the program, the staff, the coordinator. They got a bear in this trip. And they were taught all these, how to properly take care of that. That's big medicine there, that bear. So in future directions, we have plans we want to carry forward. And we're looking at setting up an NGO that's just the elders, and with their guidance, they'll decide the program. They'll look to what it is they want to do, and we'll have science plug-in. In terms of evaluation, we have requests from people that are studying, like at master's levels in cognitive sciences, wanting to help us develop the evaluation tools. So I said, sure, I have no problem. I have no problem with that because I know it works. I'm living proof. And all the challenges, like I said, are somehow we need to address the models of governance that are imposed at the local level. We need to find a way to work with them that everybody gains, everybody. It's a win-win situation, and not one person dictating how this is going to be done and how it's going to be evaluated. And it has to be of the community, in and of to maintain its authenticity and integrity. It has to be of the community, because it's evident it hasn't worked. What's been implemented in the past hasn't worked. Statistically, across Canada, Native people still represent a lot of the negative numbers. Like, we're the most incarcerated people in Canada. In terms of disease, illness, we excel in those numbers. And children in care. There's still a problem there. In my community alone, we have I think across Canada, there's more children in care than were ever in residential school. So those impacts linger. And the resonance of that experience is still there. So we need to dig that out. We need to flesh it out and get rid of it. And the opportunities, we have a members' resolution from the community members to establish a wellness center that's in and of the people. The people will decide how this is going to be done. We had 2 years ago, we had rites of passage ceremonies, and the grandmothers were the ones who organized it, and we supported them, and they said, these are all the things we want to do. Some of it, I can't talk about because it's the woman's role, the grandmother's role. When it comes to womanhood, those are things that they deal with. And for the first kill, the caribou ceremony that they did, even the blood off the snow was taken. There was no sign of anything that had happened there. And they told us that the part of the caribou that you don't eat is about the size of your thumb. Everything else should be used. That's what they were telling us. And we'll show you how, they said. So those are some of the things that... This is the 2 years ago when we did that, the grandmothers organized the first moon ceremony, the snowshoe walk, the first kill ceremony, and I don't know how you would translate the Aushtajanu. It's a hide is painted at sunrise, and it on it they mark or they give thanks for the past year, and the first symbol that they draw is the sun on that hide, and the meaning of that is deep. So 5:30 in the morning, the grandmother said, we'll start. And they did that. 8:30, we were sitting in an auditorium back at a meeting like this. They did all those ceremonies like within that 3.5, 4 hour period. And this is them as they came in. I don't know if you can notice that girl has a beaded covering over her eyes. Like it's like a veil almost. And this is my grandfather. I call him my grandfather. He carries the same. That's the caribou, his first kill. And this is where we ended up. 9 o'clock, right on the button. All the grandmothers were there again. So next week when we get home, we're doing the same thing again with the whole community. And we're trying to get the school involved because you can't teach culture in a classroom. So what we did was we brought the lodge to town, and there's a space in between the school and the center. That's where they're putting it up. Right now as we speak, so every now and then you'll see me on my phone and I lean over to him and what do we do here? So, and for future directions, we want to end up with a wellness center, like I said. The process itself has been long, and undoing the thinking that has been imposed is work in itself. I asked a question one time, and I said, how do you say colonization in Cree? How would you say that on social media in my community? And the responses that I got all had to do with changing the cosmology or the thinking, the worldview of our people. All the answers that came back. And I said, this is how I started this dialogue. I said, this is what we're dealing with. How do we get back to that path? And it's through the elders. So that's my 5 cents, since nobody wants pennies anymore. That's my presentation.
Masi Larry. Beisha, would you like to say a few words?
I know you guys been sitting there for a long time, so I'm going to tell you a joke first before I talk. I was doing some work in this little community, and while I was doing the workshop, these 2 elders kept putting their hand up. I was trying to ignore them, but they kept doing this. So I finally said, okay, go ahead, speak. And they said, oh, we really need to tell you the story. My buddy and I were always together. We never separated each other. They said, one day we decided to go way on top of the mountain with our brand new skidoos. We're just going up with our brand new skidoo, and then my friend's skidoo broke, and I was behind him. He opened up the hood, kept trying to start that skidoo back and forth, nothing happening. So that some of those little slang words started to come out of his mouth. And he looked at his buddy and he said, something wrong with your skidoo. Maybe we should go back into town and take my skidoo and we'll go back in town. He looked at his buddy, he said, no darn way. When we come back up here, all the skidoo parts will be gone. So he said, okay, we'll keep trying. Just then way over there, ravens started coming, just talking away, and there was a tree not far from them. He sat up there, looked down at those old people, and he just going, just laughing at those two old people. He still kept pulling and pulling. He kept laughing, and these two old people said, "You just be quiet." And they just kept pulling. Nothing happened. Finally, the raven got tired, so he looked down at them and he said, "Spoplok, spoplok, spoplok." So the old man took a spark plug out of his pocket and took the old one out, and he put the new one in there. He just took one big pull. That skidoo started. You see? Our culture is coming back. The ravens are starting to tell us what to do now. So that's, that is healing, what you guys just did. Sharing funny stories is what we need to do. And it's because we don't do enough gathering and talking and laughing. We're so involved in work, work, work. We go home, we work, work, work. And we just have little time to sleep, and then we're up again, doing it again. What I want to share with you, it has to do with on the land-based program. I don't just see one on the land-based program. Today, everybody's talking about developing on a land program with culture, with languages, activities, all that. That's good. I'm really proud to hear that happening, because we need that. We've been so impacted by residential school, and many other things happen to us with so much rules and regulations, policies, and everything that's been implemented to us since the first people came onto our land. I look at that as an impact, but me, I was born differently. I was born right from the land, in the North Shore of Great Bear Lake. I was raised by two old people who were already elders by the time I was born. I had a grandpa that was really an incredible medicine person and a healer. My father was the same way. I come from those people that showed me how to survive on the land, to be able to see in the sky before the sun set what the weather's going to be tomorrow. I was raised on the land to be able to see if something is moving over there, you have to know exactly what it is. It could be a wolf, it could be a wolverine, it could be a caribou. You have to see and really study them, because that's how you know what's out there. I was raised on the land with elders that coming with dog teams in the winter time to come and visit so they can share stories. They would come in the summertime, portaging, to come to see us in the North Shore. My father was the kind of man that people come at him all the time and wanting to be around him, the same as my grandpa. I never see those people ever talk about problems. They only talk about good things. They talk about their winter, what they did on the land, summertime, springtime, fall time. They talk about preparation for all those 4 seasons, what we have to do as family. In fall time, they start putting out the nets and they start fixing all the nets because there's no store where we are. In the springtime, we have to start making rat canoes so that we can travel from where we are to travel back home. And we have to travel when the ice melts on the shore. We have to go on to those rat canoes and just let our dogs loose, and they'll be running beside us. Learn how to be a great hunter, how to be able to shoot. a caribou with one shot. Geese, ducks flying in springtime. I used to shoot them with one shell. You don't take anything from the land without offering first. Today we learn just to take. We forget to give thanks for all the things that come to us. That's how we learn. If we don't have anything to give, we give out food. Before we slit the caribou on the throat, we make sure we take the blood, but we say thank you, so that their spirit go back home where they came from. Everything is in order. It was made that way for us. Our culture is very sacred, and we have to continue on teaching that sacredness of that culture. If we don't do that, we're going to lose it forever. The language, when you speak your language, your mind and your spirit are strong. You teach that to your children, to your grandchildren, great-grandchildren. It should never die. Today, we can make apps. We can make all kinds of things for you to learn. There's no excuse not to. Every footstep we make on the land, we put that footstep there because it's our ancestors that put it there. We have to respect that. We don't put garbage on the land. What you take in, you take it back out. You keep that land in a sacred way for your children, for your grandchildren, and for the ones who are not here yet. This is what we're trying to teach the modern world. When you dig that hole in that ground, you make sure you fill it back up. You take contamination out of the Mother Earth, you put it back. Find a way to get rid of it. But don't leave it there so we get sick from it. The animals get sick from it. The water gets sick from it. The air gets sick from it. Everything we do is our responsibility, nobody else. It's the mankind that is making our Mother Earth sick. Our medicines are getting sick. Our healers are getting sick. How do we make that better? That's what we should be all working on. So that we do have something to teach our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, so that they can have a school to be able to have that knowledge for their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. We have to put everything in place so that we make sure that our people become healthy again in the mind, body, emotion, and spirit. So that you become one person, not four beings, one person. That's what healing is all about. Is how do we don't make excuse not to go there. I want to tell you a story about Yukon. I worked in Yukon for over 12 years. I lived there. I loved my people there. I love them so much, I gave my life to them from here. As I traveled the journey in Yukon, the people are just beautiful. I love just the way they are. And then I went up as far as Dawson City. That was the last place I moved to. There, some of my family, we said, let's buy a piece of land so that we can develop on a land-based program. So we bought this very sacred place about an hour up the river from Dawson City. And as soon as we went there, I just see so much goodness in that area for healing. So we begin the process of fixing the land. There's cabins, there's everything there. And we start cleaning it up, developing it. The first group of people came were the Chinese people from their land. They came down by a river. So we welcomed them in. We had a tiny little bucket there to say, if you want to put some donation, please do that. And they wouldn't leave. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, go by 4 weeks. Oh my goodness. So we just taught them everything. And we make a fish wheel on the river. And it would just turn. It's made out of birch bark. And it just turns. And it just catches the fish and puts the fish right back into a basket in the river. And they just love that. And the Japanese people came also, and they would hook up the fish so they can make their own food and make Japanese food. And then after that, one day I was busy at the camp. I hear a boat coming in. So I ran down to the shore, and there was a supreme judge right on top, standing in the boat with his hand on his hips. And he looked at me and he says, "Where were you, Bessa? I've been looking for you for 3 years." And I thought, oh my God, what did I do wrong? And he said, "I've been looking for you. We have so many troubled youth. So many of our people are in jail. And we need you to help." And we heard from Peter and Margie that we just bought a camp. And they want to know if they could use their camp for young offenders and for offenders to come in. I told them everything I need to run this camp. They gave me everything I asked for. But one thing I told them, for the young offenders and for people that are in justice system, you cannot bring any policies or anything into this camp. I told them, if your program worked, then why are these young people and the people from jail are here? Why are they here? It's because your system is not working. So I told them what I like to see is that once you drop them off, I don't want anybody from the justice system, from police, from anybody coming to this camp. Because we're going to run 2 months program with them to begin their healing process. I'm a little girl. Some of these guys are huge, but I'm a little girl, but tough. I told them, do not call me by my name. I'm your grandma. So I taught them to first, I didn't never introduce myself to them when they come to the camp. Because I'm watching them. I see how they are as individual. I studied them really well. And then after, the next day, I introduced myself to them. And I said, I see how much work we have to do. You're going to be doing all the work yourself. And I'm going to teach you how to do that. So on the third day, they're bickering with each other. And then I put them in a circle. I said, hey, this is on a land. You be careful. I said, you look over there, you see that big birch tree? They looked and they said, yeah, that's a grizzly bear moving that tree. Every once in a while, if you don't fix yourself, I said, animals are going to start coming into the camp because they're curious of who you are and what you're doing. So you be careful. And I said, if you guys have any thoughts about running away, it takes 4 days to go on this trail up in the hill to Dawson City. There's a bunch of canoes and boats down here. You can take it anytime. But I'm going to tell you, I just have to sing one song, and you'll see them right in front of you, no matter how you do it. So the most safest place for you is to hang around Grandma. Because you overstep that boundary I put around that camp. The animal's going to know you open the door to them. You want to be safe, you stay in there. And we'll do a lot of things and activities. So I brought in all people that have very unique way of looking after all the people, offenders. I even brought in elders that have so much cultural knowledge to teach all these people coming in. And boy, did they learn so fast. They're hunters. I wouldn't allow them to have any steel. They have to make everything for hunting. They make bows and arrows. They make bone knives. They make spears out of bones. And that's their hunting gear for them to hunt. A lot of them that come into the camp have never ever became a man. They were still little boys. So I had to teach them, for them to be, as like you say, manhood. They have to become a man. And that really works well because they become very proud. And the elders showed them everything, how to make canoes, snowshoes, everything. And boy, I tell you, they were just incredible. I worked on them with healing my staff. Anytime they did anything bad, there's a punishment I give them. One of the greatest things they don't like touching is spruce tree with a whole bunch of sap. That's what I teach them. That's their punishment. Because that medicine also, when you're touching it with your bare hands, that medicine, it penetrates inside you and heals whatever is sick inside you. And that's why that was their punishment. So slowly they became really great people. And right to the last 2 months, on the last 3 weeks, I brought in their parents. I brought in their grandparents. So that they can interact with them. If they have wives and children, I bring them in. So that they can interact with them. And to work with them to fix that problem that is created by them. And after I did that, they become families right in the camp. And then on the last 2 weeks, I send them out with the elders to go hunting. And I tell you, it doesn't take a day. A couple hours, they're already back. They kill the moose or caribou, they offer, they do everything. And they come back with either woodland caribou or they come back with moose. They're bringing them back. They carved everything with their knife they made. And you should see them. Their chest sticking right out, walking so proud. And part of that whole healing too, I have a sweat lodge out there for them. They have to go through initiation for themselves to heal themselves even much more. And it's really important that they do everything on their own. And we don't do anything for them. They wash their own clothes, they hang them dry, they cook, they do everything. There's all kinds of duties they have to do. And by the time the last week, I take them into Dawson City. I get the haircuts for them. They get massage. They get reflexology. They get their nails done. Everything is just beautiful, and they buy clothes. Then take them back to the community, back to the camp. And we celebrate. They get diplomas for graduating to where they are. And they're just in this balanced level by the time I finish with them. The staff work hard. And then before they go, I do ceremony on each individual one of them. And they completely their true self that they were born to be. We burn all their clothes, their blankets, everything. We burnt them. Because they're new. I told the families, when you go home, buy everything new. Smudge your house. You could use spruce needles and boil it and let it go through your house. Take your pillows and clean them so you don't have bad dreams. So all those past things come back. There's a big change. That's what I'm talking about. There's got to be two kinds on a land-based programming. Because we can't forget our brothers and our sisters that are in jail, in penitentiaries. We can't forget them. I've done men that were in penitentiary, and you think they were tough. They're not tough. They're easy to work with. So when you're looking at programs, you can't heal individual just that much. You got to heal the whole being of that individual. And when you see that, they're very proud. So I have to send them away now to go home, experience their new life. They cry. All the time they cry. They don't want to leave the camp. I told them there's a river comes all the way from Whitehorse to here. You can come down by canoe and visit me anytime. And one of the greatest things I have to do is put my hands on my hip and I say, Grandma needs to take a rest now. I need to take a rest. So it's my time now, so you need to go. Their children just hang on to me. And they say, Grandma, I never loved anybody in all my life. But it's important to care for everybody that needs that help. We're all human beings. Residential school damaged us. And it's not right. That's why any policies come into the camp, I make my staff make a big fire. I put them right into the fire. Because it's not important. It's important to put that mind, body, emotion, spirit in a healthy way. That's important. So that's what I want to share about, is healing. It's a huge, huge job. You got to have an incredible staff, but you need to train them the way they need to look after those human beings. You also have to make sure that the justice system supports you every way. You have to make sure that part of the education that we teach out there, sometimes I bring in, it depends on the group, I bring in a teacher in there to find out what grade level are these young people are. And so that when they leave that camp, it's all written out what education level they are and what they want to be. I always ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that's what the social services have to work with, to make sure that education department works with them, to make sure that education is in place for them. So you got to make sure you have everything in place in the right way to build on the young people and the people that has been put away for so long. There's no such thing as bad people. It's just that there wasn't enough love to teach them to be who they need to be. And we have to make sure that we put that love in place, and to make sure that those people have the right to live on this earth just the way we live. And to make sure that we check in on them once in a while. And how I check on them is when I walk down on the street, I can hear my name yelling, "Grandma, Grandma," and I know they're doing good. So that's what I want to share. Healing is a huge thing. That's just a beginning of healing. But make sure that you put the programs in the right way. Governments are opening their minds and their hearts to the program now. So make sure you ask for what you really need. And to make sure, don't wait. Don't wait for another week. Do it as soon as you get home. Gather your people. I always believe you talk to the elders first, because they'll guide you where you need to go, what they see, what they want to see, and how they want to see it done. You make sure you have a meeting with your community people talking about this program, because you need support from them. And then you bring in the leadership last and say, this is what I want you guys to work on. I don't want to see this program failing. We want to see it on a land-based program going. So I want to say, Masicho. You guys are really thinking, oh, please continue on your good work you're doing so far. Just keep building on what you have done already. Make it bigger. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to me and from all our ancestors that have been waiting for this to happen for a long time. It's finally coming into place to revive the culture, the language, and every knowledge that we have is going to be implemented through all of you. Masicho. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know. Do I have time? Thank you. I'll thank you for using my time. So I don't have to talk much. Yeah, thank you for, I have an honor for you being here. Thank you all for everything that was well said and all the presentations that were done. And they're very interesting to me, for us. But I want to say, share a little bit of, I don't know, I can't say my knowledge. No, this comes from the On the healing part of it, then we all understood the way it was put, and we had other presentations that were done here, and they were all said that I wanted to say. First of all, I'd like to apologize. I can't speak as well as Larry here, my interpreter. He's the one that interprets most of the things that I wanted to say, because my English is not that good. It's poor. I have a poor English, and lots of times I ask myself, when I want to explain myself on some things, did I say that right, or because a lot of the translations that when we do, could be translated differently, and some things they don't go right when we present those translations. But I like to bring up a little bit of on that healing part of it. We all say that the healing comes from the land, and I believe it. The reason why I believe that is I've been through it all. I was born out on the land, and I'm raised from the land. And lots of times I explain myself reason why I'm so proud of the land and respect the land and respect what the nature has provided for us. Like I always call that the land where I came from. I say that's where I came from. And where I came from is the land where I was raised, and where I came from. Like I heard somebody saying here, because they were born in a certain city or community, and that's where they belong. And this is what I believe in. There are lots of things when I want to, know about. I went to school. I was in the residential school for 4 years, which didn't give me much education. What we always say, like the university students, you went only up to grade 3. This is why my English is so poor. And the thing that I like to bring up was like when we say about the healing. Sure, it's the healing over there in the land. And lots of times I explain to these young people, like when they ask questions like on land-based program, I said if the nature when I was born out in the land with nothing, living off the land, more to say. That's the way it's where I was born, the way I was born. And the way I explained to these young people said, when we talk about the land and the nature, what the nature provides, is a very respectable thing to talk about. In return, when we talk about the nature, we should respect nature. And the reason why I say that, and telling these young kids, is if the nature hadn't respected me, because we were depending on the nature's, what the nature provides for us when I was born. And if the nature hadn't respected me at that time, I probably wouldn't be here. So this is part of the reason why I say about the natures provide. And we were all out there. And this is where we come from, out on the land. Lots of times I hear, let's go back. Where do we come from? When we talk about, yeah, we can go back there. But there's lots of things that we have to do. Yeah, when we say about the healing process of the land, it's true. I believe that. Because I can, but I don't have much time to tell stories about those things. But anyway, the experience I had, a lot of experience I had out there. When we say about the healing, somebody was sick, we had the medicine out there. We have all kinds of medicine out there, like myself, when with my mother and father, we used to travel up in the land. We go up from our community, like Sesame, you call it, that's where I come from, that's our community. We go up, we come out of there in the fall, like, to go up there, we didn't take nothing with us. We couldn't take anything with us because we didn't have room in our canoes. We just had a paddling canoe, travel up the river, up at least over 600 kilometers up the river. And we used to spend, the only time I used to see a house standing when I get out of into that river, and when I go around that bend of that river, that's the last time I saw the house. All that year that I was gone, living it off the land during that time. I was gone about at least 10 months a year, or a little over sometimes. We come back in June or like that, and just spend a month and a half or less sometimes. We go back up there again. And this is where I have all that the experience that we had. Like when we say that all that in there, everything was provided. Medicine, food, whatever you need. The health. Your health conditions were very good all that time. But we start how good it was in those days in the land. And it's very hard to teach these young people of that. The feeling that you had towards that land, they don't have that. And to be able to convince some of these young kids about that, what really is, it's a little bit difficult sometimes. Because we have heard all these, sometimes they will tell you, because we have a new technology now today. That's what all the university students are facing, got this new technology, keeping up to date about these electrical, whatever you call them. And it's hard for us to explain these things, because their senses are with that, up to date. But when I tell them about myself, where I was, how I was brought up, where I came from, they'll probably say, "Oh, you don't know nothing. Can't tell you because you didn't go to school that well. You are not experienced to this. Even we have the new technology today, and if I go back and when I want to know the answer, some of these things that are asked for me with the new technology, and say, what's wrong, even tried facing the crisis that we're facing right now with the young. I apologize for bringing that up. That we're in a crisis today, trying to put these young people into back on the track. But, when we speak about that, a little bit about saying, all those precious gifts that we received in there, I was very rich. All the experience that I had, like saying, I had that I'm told that I don't have the new technology that today. In my head, the way that I was explained, the way it's still there, some of it's still there because some of it is missing. The reason why it's missing is this destruction of today's technology. Because I had the same experiences of today, what the new technology knows. Because even talking to my parents, my grandparents, my ancestors, they all already told me these crises that we're going to face. This is what's going to happen if you don't do something. If you don't keep up with what we already have. Now, if they didn't have the new technology that we're facing today, how would they know about that we're facing today? They already told us about it. Because they had a little, I've heard about somebody saying little scientific minds that they had. And I experienced on that a little bit. But I still have. And lots of times I'm shy to talk about it. I'm afraid to talk about it. A little bit ashamed to talk about these things. By talking about the medicine that we received, it's a little bit on the sad side. Like what I said, that for a person that was sick, we use these animals too to bring up the cure or the medicine or the healing. A sick person might say, I wish I could have a partridge to feed on. As soon as you hear what she was saying, that's what she needs to be cured. If it I've seen it happen, and we feed him with that. Sure enough, it wasn't long that he got healed with that. And this is why we believe. And that partridge eats the vegetation from the land. And our Creator provided the vegetation for us. In those animals and in the plants. Sometimes Larry doesn't like what I'm telling you. I brought that up one time and said, things like this, what's wrong with this? Something wrong in that doesn't happen anymore. And I say, it's our fault. That's the part that Larry doesn't like. Yeah, I'll elaborate on that a little bit. I don't have much time, I guess. Now, the way it works is why it don't work anymore. Saying it's our fault. It has something to do with a lot of the environment. In my community, like the one that I'm telling you that I used to travel about 600 miles. 600 miles, at least 600 kilometers up the river. That's the route that I used to take every year, year after year. Now, what's happening to that now, today? There have been dams on that, reservoirs. The place that I say where I was born, I knew the exact spot, a lake. There's a very good lake and a fine lake, and there was lots of fishing there. Anything provided for me at that time. And that was my home. Can I go back to that? I don't think so. If I want to go back to that, I don't know how many feet of water, underwater it is. My home. And that we had that river was pure, just like this water. But now, we can't even drink out of that. It's polluted. I say it's polluted. With my little, I was a mechanic one time. Oh, not one time, quite a few times. With my mechanical mind that I had, knowing about that water, that water was a natural water. And everything out there, what the nature provided, this was natural. Natural. And now when you think about that water, why did you say it's polluted? Like I say with my little mechanical knowledge. I used to be a mechanic. I knew about the batteries. Acid. When the acid is low on a battery, the water is low. You need to add water that's very pure. You can't even scoop of water to fill that with steel or a cup or tin. If you do, you're destroying the acid. That's how that metalworks. Now, the reason why I say it's polluted, I don't know how many miles and the volume of water out there, all these reservoirs that we have. And it all came through the turbines. And those turbines are made out of steel. They all come through that, the volumes of water coming through there. And that's why I say that water, you might say, it's not natural anymore. And this is why some of these things that were provided for us from our Creator, it's our fault sometimes with that. These crises that we have to face. It's our faults. We destroyed it, what was given to us as a garden to live from. I even experienced some of these animals, the creatures that are out there on the land. The attitude is different. And then sometimes you see a bird or the animal, very different. What's happening to them? We all know, I've heard about saying, that water, the open water that we have, that doesn't freeze anymore, that water. And during this time, the cold weather, that's the best time, the water evaporates. And it's up there in the air, the atmosphere. And for the environment. What does the environment do to that? It evaporates and it's up in the air and floats around there. Because this is where we see the form of clouds. And when that water gets heavy, it rains, pours on the ground. And it spoils the natural growth of vegetation that was out there with that polluted water. And not only that, we have transmission lines going through the lands. Comes all the way up to the States. In those transmission lines, we know there's a lot of, we call that radiation on the land that pours from the. And what's happening? The radiation. You see a lot of berries growing, really good berries, rare, good vegetation on the ground. It's from that. And it happens the same thing with the fish on that. It's just like when you see a fish. Okay. When you see a fish, different, very fat. The fish is very fat because of the feeds in there. And scientifically thinking about that, looking at that, it's the same thing as what you do to a chicken. You inject the chicken to make him grow, and we feed on that. Same thing with that fish. Same thing with the species that we were talking about. And we feed on those. And the birds and the bears and whoever feeds out of the vegetation. They feed on the land. And we're the ones that we're going to be eating those animals. And this is, sometimes I'm afraid to bring that up towards our native people. And there are things like that. There's some other things that I want to learn, because I could talk more, but the time doesn't allow me. Sorry. Thank you.
Masicho, Eddie. I think that's really important to think about. If you take care of the land, that's taking care of ourselves, and that the land can really be a powerful healer, and that it's about self-reflection and finding your true self. So Masicho for coming and sharing your wisdom here today, Larry, Eddie, and Besa.